Hey, what do you know? It's Beau.
Live and in person.
Live and in person.
Beau just pointed out that we've known each other since the early 80s, and Beau is something of a Renaissance man in that he has held so many jobs in comics. Of course, he's best known as a writer and the creator of WYNONNA EARP. And he's written a lot more than that, but you worked for Todd McFarlane at one point, didn't you?
Yep. Started out in '87, went to work for Eclipse Comics. I was their VP of marketing and promotions. And when they closed down in '94, I went to work for Todd McFarlane Productions, McFarlane Toys, and Image Comics as their VP of marketing. Stayed there till 2000. And then in 2000, I went to work VP of marketing for IDW Publishing. And I think it was 4 years later, I left there and went to work for June Planning, which was a Japanese toy company. Worked marketing and promotions for them for a while. And then after that, I decided, I was getting a little on in age, and I decided I don't want to do the marketing stuff every day. So that was at the point I granted the wish of my 12-year-old self and just decided to do the writing and the writing alone.
Nice.
Now, you've written a number of characters, including Law Dog.
No, Law Dog was Chuck.
Oh, Chuck. You did The Dogs of Danger.
That's it. Yeah, that was one of the
Flint
first.
Henry. And you know, we should probably interview Flint one of these days. He's one of the most unique artists to work in the field, but he hasn't done much lately.
No, he's been semi-retired from doing artwork or self-exile, whatever you want to call it. But he's in Rehoboth Beach, Delaware, and he's staying pretty low profile of his own choice. I got to tell you, three guys that I work with in comics, probably the most creative artist on all levels that could sculpt, mold, write, draw, paint, do the whole thing, was Flint Henry, Mitch Bird, and Brad Gorby. And all three of them are in self retirement or exile right now just because they want to. And I'm either a blessing or a curse for them. So you hang around with me, you either retire or you go into exile.
Well, there's certainly three incredible artists, inimitable, I might say. Nobody can ape their styles.
No, that's
you
true.
look at a Mitch Bird or a Flint Henry, and you know immediately who drew it.
That's for certain. And there's a point I'd like to bring up in the fact that before I got into comics in any shape, way, or form, that there were some individuals that, because I wanted to be a writer, I was already doing the marketing and other stuff, audio, video sales and stuff. But Mike, you were one of the first people to actually, I extended out contact to you. And back then you were more than gracious in every aspect of writing stuff. And I got to thank you for always being blunt too. But you taught me, you gave me examples of how to write. I've still got, most of them did not burn up in the office fire that I had in the early 90s, but I've still got a lot of the yellow sheet scripts that you thumbnailed, all that. I've still got a lot of that. I've got all of the correspondence that we sent back and forth to each other. But Mike was one that said, hey, this is what a treatment looks like. Do this. If an editor does this, you do that. All kinds of tips that he did not have to do to somebody that could not further or help his career at that time. And Walt Simonson was another, Robert Kaniger, Murray Boltonoff, but Tim Truman, of course. And Tim's actually the one who got me into comics when Eclipse was looking for somebody to do sales and marketing for him. But Mike, I always owe you for that, bud. And again, you were always blunt, and I needed that because there wasn't any glad-handed. If I asked Mike something, I said, is this any good? And Mike would give me kind of a Larry Hama type of response going, nah, Beau, this stinks. You really need to take this back and do it over. But at the same time, when there was a good idea, he was always first one. And Mike gave me, and I don't know if you remember this, Mike, but you gave me a real good piece of advice back then. you told me nobody talks like you. No one's got your accent in comics. Use that. He told me to not invent, but amplify my personality, because one thing he always told me that it stuck was, you are the product. Even though you're writing somebody else's book, somebody else's character, you as a person are the personality and the product to push. And I always took that to heart.
Yeah.
Well, I know that DC tapped you to recreate Green Lantern.
Yep. This was during the deconstruction of Green Lantern. They handed Guy Gardner over to me, and I did that for 2.5 years. And I tell you, that period of the 90s, right around 94, 98, right around, was a time of freedom at DC for me, in the fact that this book they were getting ready to cancel. They had nothing to lose by handing it over to me. They did, and ended up getting a 2.5-year run out of it. We put the sales at the beginning, they were 35, 40,000, which was cancellation back then. And we raised it to 65,000 before they brought the Green Lantern Corps back 2.5 years later, and decided Guy Gardner Warrior wasn't going to be a part of that. But I had my editors were Kevin Dooley and Eddie Berganza, and I got to say, they gave me total freedom. I got to do some goofy stuff while I was there, but it was fun. And my only goal that I had during that period of Guy Gardner was not to make him a one-note character anymore. The one punch from Batman was all he was known for, that and the bowl haircut. And my goal was to make him a likable guy. The powers that we gave him and stuff were secondary. Bottom line is, I just wanted to make him a likable character in the DC universe. And part of the freedom was I got to pick and choose all these misfit toys that DC had as far as other characters, which at that time was Lady Blackhawk, part of the Metal Men, and Tiger Man from My Greatest Adventures. I got to bring them in as supporting characters and give them personalities, because, it was a chance. And, I've always looked at every comic I do as the last one I'm going to get to do, because someone will yank it away. And this is my 35th year, so I've gotten away with it for quite a while.
Beau, tell us a little bit about your method. Do you write full script?
Yep. I've only written plot Marvel style once. I always write full script. I use for the last 10 years, I've used the Final Draft program because I use that for screenplay stuff, but also comics. I've got it so it adapts that. And I always tell the artist that I always really want to have a good collaborative conversation with them all the time, if possible, that even though I write in full script, mark key notes and stuff, nothing's written in stone. If they see a way to enhance it, to make it better, Beau, 3 panels will work instead of 5. I can do this. I am full boat on that, because it does nothing but make me look better, and it enhances the story. So yeah, I've always worked full script and enjoy that. I get to set a mood more that way.
Do you outline?
No. I outline in my head. I carry it around forever. And then let me see here. I've got probably easily 100 little leather notebooks that is what I guess I outline and skeleton in that. And I keep all those because one day I want to hand those down to my family so that they can sell them in a yard sale for 50 cents a piece. But those are key, because I jot down ideas. It'll be pieces of dialogue. I've built stories around 2 interchanges of dialogue before. I'm pretty see the pants. We were on a writer's panel at San Diego once. It was a bunch of us. Mark Wade was one of them. Came to him and he was talking about how he outlines. He does this and does that. And mine was pretty much I make it up as I go, almost. And he goes, I couldn't, he wasn't saying that mine was wrong, his was right. He just said that he could not work in that way. And it's like with rewrites, the more I have to rewrite, especially with an editor and another company's character, I got to be honest with you, the more stale it gets. I've seated the pants right then and there, and it works for me. I can't say it works for everybody, but it does work for me.
I used to do that, but now I'm a firm believer in outlining. But when I do a comic book story, I will sometimes look at the blank page before proceeding when I don't know what's going to happen next. I know the beginning, the middle, and the end, but there are a lot of areas in between that you have to fill in, and they have to be lively. You can't waste the reader's time with dead space. So there's something got to be going on every time. That means every part of the comic has to be entertaining, and it keeps you on your toes.
Oh yeah, definitely. I can see 100%. Mike, has it? Do you, when you're, now that you outline more of everything else, do you miss not outlining sometimes, or is this like really works for you? It's a step ahead.
Well, it works for me, but in every case, whether it's a novel or a comic book series, I find myself veering away from the outline, either 1/3 or 1/2 of the way through, because as you know, if you create a compelling character, at some point the character is going to turn around and tell you what he's going to do next. And also ideas come to you to enhance the story when you think about it. Writers think about this stuff all the time. They're done writing, but they're still thinking about it, which is why we keep these notepads next to our beds.
100%. 100%. Oh, do you find sometimes, let's say you've got a semi-ensemble cast, Mike, do you find yourself leaning towards one character and almost letting that character get most of the spotlight? Do you have to rein yourself back in? I know I have on this quite a few times, and it's always like a drug addiction for me. I've got to stop in the middle of the story and do that. Have you run across that happening?
Not really, although of course the protagonist is the hero of the story. But the challenge is to make secondary characters compelling and interesting so that they're not wasting the reader's time. I was recently hired to write a reboot of Cobalt Blue, which was a science fiction character in the 80s. It was originally drawn by Mike Gustovich. And in fact, it looks like Mike is going to draw this new version as well.
Oh, that's excellent.
They gave me a clean slate. They said, we want a new beginning for him, and we wanted a 62-page book. That's a big book. So they gave me a few hints. So I created a star-spanning epic, and then you start to introduce characters. You have to have a bad guy. And you don't want the bad guy to be the same as every other bad guy since time immemorial. You don't want him to talk like Doc Doom or talk like an old Stan Lee script. I mean, we love those old Stan Lee scripts, but anybody who writes "Who Dares" these days, you better check yourself. It's just advice I always give to writers: is watch out for those cliches.
100%.
So you think about these people, and one thing I do is I'll model them after somebody I know, or at least a certain personality trait or something I've experienced personally, because people are unique, and you get around, you see a lot of people, and everybody behaves in a different way. And every now and then somebody will say something or do something that just sticks in your mind because you've never seen it before.
Yeah. Writers are good people watchers.
Oh, that definitely. Mike brought up earlier that one of the first things I did was Dogs of Danger. And in it, I actually thought that this is going to be the only time I'm going to get to do comics. I'll never get to do them again. And every character in that book was based on a real person. Mike was in there as one of the characters. He was martial art.
The villain. Oh,
yes, he was martial art. He was a bad guy in that, but he was in there. But everyone, I mean, Chuck Dixon, John Ostrander, Tim Harkins, Flynn Henry, myself, Tim Truman. My insurance agent was the main bad guy in it. My best friends, my family was all in it because I thought this is the only chance, and I want to get this to where they'll always have something they can show somebody and stuff. But Mike's right. You can base it off somebody that someone you've come into contact with, or now a combination of a couple of people. I've done that many a time, and it's always saved my butt as far as making an interesting character and stuff.
Yeah, but Beau, I wanted to ask, like, concerning your writing. You've written a WYNONNA EARP comic after the TV show came out, right?
Yeah, we changed.
I was going to say, how did that affect it, and how did you change the?
it was fun for me, and the fact that I'd been doing Wynonna EARP for 20 years. I created it in 90. Well, I created it when I was in elementary, but it was first published in 96 at Image Wildstorm. And when we did the television series, we had a talk, me and IDW Publishing. We want to do this. We don't want to rehash episodes. We don't want the episodes to rehash what you've already done in the comics. And I was all for that 100%. We reversed it. When I wrote Wynonna EARP as a blonde, all those 20 years, she was 40 to 45 and at the peak of her career. So we decided, let's flip that. This will almost be like her origin. This is her at 27, starting out in the Black Badge division as a covert U.S. Marshal. And it was fun. It was like a whole new book, but at the same time, I got to cherry pick all the things that I enjoyed the most with the television show. And they in turn picked all the things and cherry picked what they liked best from the series. And we ran them back and forth. And now they were both in the same universe, yet a parallel universe.
Right.
So some of the things that happen on the show don't happen in the comic and vice versa, which made it great. I had a bigger budget because I'm doing it in comics and you can do everything. But, and both were lighthearted in the fact that humor was a big part of both things. And I'm a firm believer in not every story can be based off of the gritty times of the 80s. And like Mike was talking about, we love the stuff by Stan and other people, but whereas how dare you, we're not going to have in there the same thing in this. Every bad guy is, not insane, and every good guy wasn't beat up as a kid and made to ride a donkey with a pink dress on. So it was a lot of fun. It was actually very easy to do. So I got inspired off things they were doing. They got inspired off things that we were doing in the comic as well.
Did you have, I'm just wondering in general, since you've done her for quite some time, did you have any specific like female role models in your life that kind of influenced her character or anything like that?
Most definitely. And again, going back to what Mike said earlier, they were all based off real life in the fact that my mother was a very independent woman. I mean, my dad was, 6'2", 250 pounds, did pinball machine jukebox business all of his life, in bars every night, checking machines. And, there was many a night he came home and I said, "What's wrong with your voice?" "You got hit in the neck with a pool stick." "Well, how did that happen?" "Well, I hit a guy with the blackjack." I mean, it was that way. No exaggeration. It was that kind of life. Well, even though he was like that, my mom was probably twice as tough. I mean, if it came time to patch the roof, she tied a rope around her waist, tied it to the bed, climbed out the window, and went and patched it herself. She cussed like a sailor. I mean, wonderful woman, taught Sunday school, this, that, and the other. But if it was Monday, for a long time, me and my brothers thought our names were "you little bastards." So she was tough and independent. In the same aspect, her mother, my grandmother, was a saint. I mean, the most selfless woman I've probably ever met in my life. Meant a lot to me, always made me feel special. So Wynonna EARP is actually based off the two of them put together, their best points and their most raw points. But yeah, definitely. So, and part of my thing was in the beginning of Wynonna EARP as a comic was not to make her look like a stripper with a badge, which I had to fight with artists constantly, even though I am the creator. I own this. In the full script, I'm telling them, draw this. This is wrong. It just kept on and on. And to be honest, at Image at that point, they were prodding them to, we want sex sales. We want this look. And drove me nuts. I did not get Wynonna EARP to look like what I always thought she should look like till the Yeti Wars graphic novel. And Enrique Villagrán, an incredible artist, great friend, and a true professional. "Yes, Beau, this is the way." He would send back. I said, "Yes, this is it."
Nice.
It was smooth sailing after that.
Yeah. Did you use his stuff as an example? You were like,
Yes.
do it like this.
Yeah, definitely. From there on out in the comics and even with the television series, because when this stuff happened pretty fast with the television series, and once it did, they were pretty quick in handing in the pilot episode script, a spec script on top of that, and a Winona Earp for television Bible. I looked those over, and thank God I was 60 years old when this happened, because if I were to have been 30, like around when I got into the business, I probably wouldn't have handled it as well, because I immediately going, oh, they've changed this, they've changed that, and got on my high horse of this is my creation, you can't do this.
Yeah.
I looked at it this way. I'd been doing it in comics for 20 years, and I had my audience. I had a core audience, males 15 to 55. I had taken it in the direct market, sales-wise, pretty much as far as it was going to go, and that's where it was staying. But this was moving into television, a whole nother medium, which I was not working in. So I took a couple of days and read the stuff over and thought about it and said, hey, they're the experts in this field. They will either make it happen or it won't happen, and I'll still have my comics and still be able to do that. And I only changed 2 minor things, and they were actually minor things. Everything else, I said, you're the experts, have at it. And to be honest with you, with the stuff that they did, is what made the television a cult hit for 4 seasons. And those were the changes and the additions, the enhancements that they made, because they looked at my stuff and said, this will be good. Let's try this. Let's not. They weren't looking at it like I can make it better. We can get a wider audience if we do this and that. And sure enough, they did.
Yeah.
Will there be a 5th season?
What's going on right now? Since Sci-Fi decided they could no longer afford to do the show, representatives and agents are all out there with the different streaming content, people trying to get that done. Different networks talking to a lot of different people. And of course, it's been a little over a year now. And when that happens, your cast goes to the 4 winds because they've all got to work. And so my guess, and that's all this isn't anything that is happening. My guess would be if something happens, it would probably be best to do a 2-hour movie to get everything back. That way everyone can get on schedule. And then if it gets picked up as a television thing, everyone's schedule can be worked around that. And that gives everyone plenty of time. That, from my own experience and opinion, is what I would do. Whether that will happen or not, I don't know. But that would be my suggestion if I were to do something like that.
Have you done any novels, or have you thought about that with Winona?
I get that question a lot. Not only
I would
Winona,
figure just because it's Western-ish. So.
Yep, no, I get that with that and a few other properties that I've created and stuff. And I have yet to do it because, and I'll be honest with you guys, it's a thing of confidence. Since I flunked grammar twice in high school, I've, granted, yes, with a proofreader and a good editor, you can do that. But that's the part that's held me back on doing that, which will either be a big regret or I did the right thing in the long run. But that is something I am pondering. I have not closed the door on it. I just need to get it up to where I think, I can do it without making a fool of myself.
I bet Mike would be affordable for you.
It took me 30 years to learn how to write a novel, but that's because I'm a slow learner. And when I get it, I get it. And I understand it very well now. And, many writers, especially young writers, are reluctant to show their material to anyone. They say, oh, is it any good? Oh, I don't like this. And I used to be that way too, but for the past 15 years, it hasn't bothered me at all. Because when you're on top of your form and you know what you're doing, you don't have doubts about what you write. You don't make wrong turns. You don't take detours into areas that you love the writing, but it really doesn't advance the story. You understand what story is, and you can see the story stretching before you, and you know what belongs in, what doesn't.
Again, yep, with the creativeness and the content, I've got no problem. I know I can do all that. I can tell the story. It's the dotting the I's, crossing the T's, and the grammar part that just frustrate me to no end. I mean, my I say influence, not that I do it like that. That's, but Elmore Leonard was always, since I was young, was the guy that I always wanted to be able to tell a story like. And I just, even to this day, his stuff in it. And that is the vein I would like to go, because I'm not a guy that takes a paragraph to describe the sounds of leaves crunching under your feet as you walk across them. And Leonard, Elmore Leonard's always cut the fat off stuff. So
you know that Elmore Leonard never outlined.
Oh, now that
He's
I didn't know.
He's one of those guys who sat down and wrote from the seat of his pants.
Well, I've got that part going.
I was going to say, Beau's confidence is going up now.
Thank
it
you,
depends
Mike.
from writer to writer. Like Frederick Forsyth, his outlines run 100 pages. So it doesn't leave much room for spontaneity, but he's in charge of his story, and he knows what makes entertainment. It works, obviously, because we've all read Frederick Forsyth, and he's a very entertaining novelist.
Yeah. It's that. Well, and again, and I don't mean to make this gushing Mike Barron hour, but again, what Mike exhibited to me before I got in the industry when he was doing Badger and Nexus was, here's a guy that can do it all. You've got Nexus, which is this epic, wide scope story in space with a complicated but understandable hero, and the cast was excellent. Right. And then you had Badger, which had humor, it had obscure comedy and adventure, but it also had some of the most insane bad guys, and by that I mean quirky, and it's everything that I loved. And he was doing these, simultaneously, and I'm going, that's where I would like to be one day, to be able to do range-wise this, and of course, Mike proved on The Punisher and a lot of other things that he could branch out, and not a lot of guys were and could do that when Mike was doing this at the time. So, I always said Mike was a leader in that genre of being able to do any genre. So, and that's one of the things, Oh, that's. And then I met Mike. Oh my gosh, and my dreams were crushed. No, one of the neatest experiences that I had was meeting Mike in person. But there was one time we were in Wisconsin, and Chuck Dixon and Mike invited us over to his house. And you just moved in. This is the house with the trap door and all that. And we were sitting there looking at, there's a picture of Mike and Jackie Chan, and the three of us sat down there and it's talked, and it was all writer talk and fun, and it just that was a highlight of Madison. Wisconsin's always been a favorite place of mine, like a second home on a lot of levels, but that time right there was definitely one of the highlights.
Oh, thank you, Beau. Naturally, I don't remember.
Hey, no problem on that.
So I guess you weren't there when Mike fell into the trapdoor?
No. No.
I set a trap for myself and it worked.
Hey, there you go. Nothing wrong with that.
Now I must ask, Cobb.
Yep.
Which came first, the character or the dog?
That's a very good question. Before we had Cobb, the dog we have right now, we had an Australian Shepherd and an Australian cattle dog, which was blue and chubby. And the best way to describe Blue was, if Jack Bauer were to embody a dog, it was Blue. I mean, we're talking serious job. If I were laying in bed, my wife came to, go to bed, and he was sitting there, he would go, he loved her, but the boss is in there. Unless the boss gives you permission, you don't get in. And he literally, that was his job. Very smart, intelligent dog. Never growled at anybody, never growled at another dog. But if they did something, game on, he was doing it. So Cobb, the character, was based on that dog. So when they passed away after being 16 years old, when they passed away and we got Cobb, the new one, here's this big Swiss Mountain Dog mix, paws that look like shovels. And I thought, oh, this is Cobb. Because Cobb's, the character's 6'4", 240, and he's a big guy. And kind of a layered Hamilton-looking guy. And I said, that's what we're naming him, Cobb. Oh, my gosh. Cobb is more like Frasier on television than Cobb the character. I'm not kidding. He is like, it's raining. I don't want to go outside. I'll get my fur wet. I mean, he does his thing. He doesn't like squirrels. He chases them. He does all that. But he's a fancy lad. Let me tell you. But he's got the tough guy name, but he's got the urbane sense of living.
He's certainly not the persona he projects on Facebook.
Well, the squirrel party is, and the I am his valet in life. Yes, that is the way he goes too. He's a very laid back. He's a very urbane dog, unless he sees a squirrel, and then that's a different story. But it is. Thank you for asking that, Mike, because that is an interesting story, and Cobb is based off, the character is based off a dog.
Has he caught any squirrels?
No, because here's the thing. Cobb's about 100 pounds, and when he runs, he's a big boy. And I don't mean fat, I mean big. And when he runs, it's basically he's like a moose in boots. He is not the quickest. If he can grab something pretty quick. Now, he has put a lot of frogs on his death list. And that's when the paddle paw comes down, squish, they're gone. And he twirled a snapping turtle around a couple times. Oh. But as far as other dogs, there was a Jack Russell, 20 pounds tops, loose. Her name was Princess. First thing Princess did was try to attack Cobb. Cobb, oh, you're on your own, bud. Took off. That dog nailed me 3 times in the leg. So, yeah, he comes first. Every man for himself. Now, the other dog, Blue, would have had that dog as a snack, and that would have been it. But Cobb's his own man. Let's put it that way.
Well, I have a dog named Bob.
Yes, I follow Bob's adventures.
Bob, we have a fenced-in backyard, and thus far, Bob has killed 5 squirrels. And he paints the little silhouette of the squirrel next to the doggy door. I took a picture of one. I'll send it to you later.
Oh, please, yeah.
The reason I took a picture of it is I was getting up one morning, I'd go down to make coffee, and I stepped on something. I looked down, there's this dead squirrel in the middle of the living room with its head ripped off.
Oh, bud, when you got a life like that, that's free material right there. Dogs are a big part of my life. Always have been, and always will be. And I think that's one of the things that Mike and I have shared early on. That's for sure.
Yeah, that's and I gotta say that especially since you got into marketing, that was some pretty spot on advice for you. That kind of you are the character, you are the thing that and especially just because Mike is Mike, and of course Mike was around Steve Rude too, who is very much a character too. So, but I think and it's just so funny because like that applies like nowadays just as much, if not more so. But yeah, so it like that was definitely way ahead of the curve, and I was just like thinking, I was like, wow, that must have really connected with you too, just because you were already in that headspace of marketing and stuff like that.
Oh, definitely. The first more than half of my career when I got into comics in '87. It was pretty much run by as other publishers, and a lot of creators and people in the business were at that point 7 to 10 years older than I was. And most of them were, and I'm just going to were former or still hippies. And I use that's an old term now, but they were. But comics has always been the common bond. It's brought a lot of us together, no matter right, left, hippie, whatever that you are, jock. But I knew that. And again, like Mike had said before I got in the industry, the accent was one thing. I talked hick, and I want to use hick. But also I used to my younger life, I was in the first Tough Man contest long time ago when they first came out, back when you had to pay to do it, and there was, there weren't any rules and stuff like that. So there was always this Beau Smith real man thing. I liked sports and comics. No one else did then. So I said, well, I'll turn up the volume on this and use that. Beau LeDuc was one of the first characters I did in the Scout comic, which was Beau LeDuc real man. He was, the cross between John Wayne, myself, and, another tough guy, any tough guy you've seen in movies and stuff. So I went with that, and it worked. It was great. It's just an amplification of my own personality. And the funny thing was, all those years being the titan of testosterone, then I start doing Wynonna Earp with a television show. And now my core audience for that are women ages 15 to 55. Most are feminist, or they're lesbian, or they're really, and probably the most respectful core audience I've ever had in my life. So now I'm the emperor of estrogen.
I was going to say the Esquire.
Oh, it's changed. And the neat thing is, I've been able to combine both those together. So at conventions and stuff, I've got one side beating the other, and it's been wonderful. I'm just so thankful that all of them have been extremely kind, gracious, and respectful throughout the whole thing. And that's, in these days, those words don't come up very often.
Right.
So,
yeah.
Very happy.
Yeah. So what is, we assume that you're not putting yourself in exile. What are the next things on your plate that you're looking at doing?
Well, right now, just finished the second one. Mike's a part of this as well. We're doing Giant Size Manly Tales, Graham Nolan's Compass Comics.
Right.
Tim Rozon, who played Doc Holliday on the TV show, has been a lifetime comics fan. He's also been a writer, but not in comics. And he is, when we went to San Diego for the premiere, this, that, and the other, he's more excited about being in San Diego and looking for comics than he is signing things as Doc Holliday. He and I just finished 2 stories in that. One is called True North, which is a high adventure. It's an Alaskan bush pilot in 1955 in the Alaskan Territory fighting communist land pirates.
Love it.
I'm sorry. Go.
He said he loves it.
Oh, thank you. And the second one is Hope in Hell, and it's about the near future, not very far. A stranger, the stranger comes to town type of thing. His name is Duke, and it's high noon in reverse. I will say that. And the town has been taken over by some not so nice people, and Duke, through actions and through example, shows this town how to stand up for themselves. It's a little more serious than the other one, but we wanted to go both ways. Andy Kuhn will be drawing that. Andrew Paquette, we're going to keep that Andy thing going, drew the True North story. But doing that, Melanie Scrofano, who played Wynonna Earp on the TV series, she and I have co-created a series for Clover Press called Stopwatch, which is modern day science fiction, and it's a battle with DARPA, which, if you know government, they're the ones that do all the research and inventions for weaponry and everything. They're also basically the ones that invented the internet back in the early 50s, 60s. It was known as ARPA then. Right. But it's about these children of DARPA that now everything's split off. And it's science fiction. It's a lot of fun. It's got some snarky humor to it and stuff. Doing Maximum Jack for Clover. This is a character I created 15 years ago with Scott Eaton as the artist doing the designs back then. And Robert Adkins of G.I. Joe fame will be drawing this series. And he is a forest ranger that works for like the Black Badge Division. And they, not only does he go after poachers and things like that, but things in this case, it's Canadians that have gone bad and they're trying to steal an artifact that will help them control climate and to the way they want to do it. They're not bad guys. They are bad guys. Right. But they don't think they're bad. Doing that. And I've got another series. There's 4 books I'm doing. right now simultaneously. And for the life of me, I'm drawing a blank on the other one. So if I can think of it, I'll
mentioned that you were doing High Noon in reverse. Well, as you know, Howard Hawks created Rio Bravo because he was so upset about High Noon that he wanted to do High Noon in reverse.
Well, that's the best way, one sentence type thing I can think of to describe it. And it's got a little Shane in it as well. What really influenced me and Tim on that were those Westerns of the 50s, maybe early 60s, but mainly in the 50s, that, you had a really complete, The Man That Shot Liberty Valance is another, you had complete stories that all took place just in a town. There's, not a lot of roaming around the desert or anything like that. It happens right there in town and involves a whole town, not just, the hero and the villain.
I think that's John Ford's best film.
Oh, I got to agree with you. A lot of that's my personal favorite. Let's put it that way. There were things about Red River, not Red River, but The Searchers that I enjoyed. I think Wayne was just great, but sometimes I think in that one, some of the supporting stuff, like I can remember as a kid, even to an adult, the singing and Jeffrey Hunter's role was a little too, oh, gee, golly. There were some things in it. It's like True Grit with John Wayne.
Right.
I was hoping Kim Darby would have gotten shot in the first 5 minutes. She drove me nuts. Her character did. But there were,
I still think that's a great movie.
Marketing wise, I understand why they had Glenn Campbell in that. And same reason they used to have Fabian in North to Alaska and stuff. I understand that stuff, but they didn't do that in The Man That Shot Liberty Valance. That was a full dead-on serious movie.
Yeah. What we're talking about Westerns, and the one director that we all worship, who stands head and shoulders above the others for Westerns, is Sam Peckinpah.
Oh, gosh. Oh, Michael, you are so true there. I saw that in 9th grade at the theater.
You mean Wild Bunch?
Yes, The Wild Bunch. And I'm sorry. Thank you for picking that up. And I got to tell you, that was a huge influence on me because it hit a chord in me that I already had from other films and things like that I didn't know. And that's the camaraderie between men. And the camaraderie between men is so important. It's so on a level of its own. And it doesn't matter if the guys are bad, they're good, or that gray area between here. There is a camaraderie and a sense of code. It's twisted as some of them may be, but the base core of it is that camaraderie between men. The other thing that influenced me like that was Claire Huffaker, who wrote so many screenplays and films and stuff. And he wrote a book called The Cowboy and the Cossack. And I've pushed this book to anybody that will listen. Why that book has not been made into a film. But again, you've got Montana cowboys doing a cattle drive in Siberia with Cossacks. Oh. And it is just...
You gotta write that down.
It's an amazing book. If you do not feel that sense of camaraderie, and at the same time, when you get through with that book, if you don't know what friendship is, then you never will. And just an amazing book. And The Wild Bunch and The Cowboy and the Cossack are, Elmore Linder. Those are my influences that I may not. That's like saying Michael Jordan's my influence. First time I picked up a basketball. Yeah. I'm not comparing myself. I'm just saying that influenced me in so many different ways.
Have you read Louis L'Amour's The Last of His Breed?
Yes. In fact, Tim Rozon asked me what Louis L'Amour book should he read. That was the one I suggested to him.
Because it's about an American Indian in Russia. He's a jet fighter pilot who gets shot down and reverts to tribal ways in the most delightful manner.
Excellent book. I enjoyed that.
About The Wild Bunch is it's one of a handful of films I call existential thrillers. And by that, I mean, that the protagonists are doomed from the start.
Yes. But again, what's the cliche? It's not the getting there. It's the journey of getting. And that Ben Johnson and Warren Oates characters in that were just so, in one way, so vile.
But vivid, and they remain in my memory ever since. And I use them occasionally when I write. I bring in the Gorch brothers.
When they're in the village, they're taking that one rest spot, and they're playing with the children. And correct me, Mike, you probably remember he's better than mine. The old man of the village, just him and William Holden were sitting there talking about that, because Holden's smiling. I mean, here you got the Gorch brothers playing with little kids and they're having fun, but the old man tells him that, what was it? What's the quote? Even the worst of us are children at some point, or again. It's a wonderful quote. I'll have to look it up after we get off. But it just said, that movie said so much all the way through it for me. And, being in ninth grade, formidable years, that just stuck. It just stuck.
One of the most vivid movies ever made.
Yeah.
I once had lunch with Ernest Borgnine. He was on the road promoting Emperor of the North, which he made with Lee Marvin. And he had such an enormous screen presence. I was very surprised when I met him, because he was so quiet and self-effacing. He just seemed like a normal guy. But then, that's his skill as an actor. When in front of the camera, he becomes huge.
That was an excellent movie. That was another one I saw in the theaters, being younger and stuff, that just, he was excellent. Him and Lee.
Cameo.
There we go. There we go. Look at that. Look.
That's my old girl, Mac.
Oh, look at this.
All right, now you're free to go.
No, I always had high hopes for a longer career. I guess it was by his own choice, for Walter Hill. His films, I thought he was the guy to carry the torch on a lot of Western type of, not so much Westerns, but those type of things. I think he had all the feel and stuff for it, but he didn't seem to do them for as long as I'd like. Let's put it that way.
Did he direct The Long Riders?
Yes. Long Riders, The Warriors, Streets of Fire.
Brilliant. Streets of Fire is brilliant. I recently watched The Long Riders, and doesn't hold up well.
I agree with you. Oh, Extreme Prejudice. Nick Nolte. That film was, I guess, his love letter to the Wild Bunch in a way. And I loved that one. That's another one I tell my friends 30 and below to definitely check out at times. Nick Nolte was great in that. Powers Booth was wonderful. So, yeah, don't get me off on this stuff. I could talk all day about that.
I will have to check that out.
Oh, it's superb. Rip Torn's in it. He was excellent.
Yeah, they're all great.
Yeah, 100%.
When you're talking about Peckinpah and existential thrillers, you have to mention Bring Me the Head of Alfredo Garcia, which is his other masterpiece, probably the most bizarre cinematic masterpiece in history.
Yes. Benny, the character that Warren Oates played in that, is who Flint Henry has modeled his life after. He still refers to himself as Benny, and at one time he had the white suit, the outfit, the sunglasses, everything, and wear that to convention. So, and I'll never forget, someone came up to him one time at Chicago Con and go, "Oh, are you dressed up as Jim Steranko today?" Flint looked at him dead serious, and Flint's a nice guy. He looked at him dead serious. He goes, "No, I'm Benny." And they just thought, okay, he's crazy, and walked off. And I said, "Flint, didn't you explain to him what film?" He goes, "No, if they didn't know it, they don't deserve to know it." So
you got to spread the word. You got to proselytize.
That was an amazing movie. That truly is an amazing film.
And so is Ride the High Country. 3 masterpieces.
Yes. Yep. Again, when I watch that even now, I think, man, they got away with a lot of raw stuff as far as innuendos and meaning this and meaning that were just, ahead of its time. Definitely ahead of its time. I was fortunate enough. Lou Bank, you remember Lou Bank, Mike, worked at Marvel.
I do.
Lou's a great guy. I'll expose him here. He was born and raised parts of his life in West Virginia. He likes to say Chicago, but it was West Virginia. But he introduced me to Jim Silk, who was connected with Peckinpah.
I met Jim.
So I got to fly back on a flight from San Diego with him. He was so wonderful about telling me anecdotes and stories about Peckinpah, and he worked on a John Ford tribute thing. When I got back, home about a week or so later, there was a package. He'd sent me the book on the Ford thing that they had done, and Xeroxes of some correspondence with Peckinpah and that they had on certain things that we had touched on. And I thought, man, that is I'm not saying that's why I got into comics, but that's what comics has brought. All these people from different parts of life that I never thought I'd get to talk to or talk of. And that was a wonderful plane trip.
I can't think of directors working today who had that much control or vision, that type of vision that was so raw. And in many ways, I can't say wasn't audience friendly because people loved the Wild Bunch. But today's movies seem so tame.
Yep.
Compared to the movies of a Peckinpah or Walter Hill.
No, I agree with you on that. There's a lot of movies from the 70s crime films that I'll watch that I saw in the theaters then. And today's films are so tame. They think they're edgy and this, that, and the other, but they're not nearly as raw as Across 110th Street, the 7-Ups, The French Connection's another example in a lot of ways. And one good thing that I've done in my life, my son Nick, who is 38 now, I raised him. He's a Chicago Bears fan, a Cleveland Indians fan, loves black and white films of any sort and will watch them, and loves Westerns. And those are the only 4 things that I've laid down to him in a legacy. Then I'm happy. And he in turn has tried to do that with his friends and always has. And every once in a while he'll convert a couple that will do it. But I'm very proud of that, at least on I didn't teach him to play piano or anything like that, but I think this is still just as good.
Have you seen Let Him Go?
Let Him Go. No, I have not.
Kevin Costner and Diane Lane.
Oh, Diane Lane. No, I have not. I know what you're talking about. This is where they're trying to get their grandson. Where's my pad? Done. I've got that on the thing, so I'll be able to do that. Let Him Go. Appreciate that, Michael. Appreciate that.
It's almost Peckinpah-like.
Oh, gee, sign me up then. Sign me up. The Rifleman television shows that Peckinpah did before he left, those, of course, I agree with Chuck Dixon. The fact both always said that's probably one of the top 3 television shows of our favorites. Just story-wise, for half an hour, they put it into those. So, love those.
With the Western, some of the Western novels that you mentioned that have not been turned into movies or TV shows, have you thought about trying to see about doing like a comic or graphic novel adaptation?
The Cowboy and the Cossack has been through a couple different hands. At one point, Robert Culp had the rights to it. At another time, James Caan had the rights to it. And it is, what's the cliche they use or the term? Developmental hell. It's been in that for a long, long time. I have talked to the people that represent me and friends of theirs and associates of theirs and stuff. And everybody that's checked on it said it's a mess to try and get any kind of rights because everyone's got their hand in it.
Right.
And so many that, it's bound and can't get out. I got a property in Dark Horse. Unfortunately, it has a bad thing to it. I created a Western, turn of the century, called 200 People to Kill. And Dark Horse and I had the deal for it. Eduardo Barreto was the artist on it, a good friend of mine that I worked with on Cobb and other stuff. And we were doing that. First scripts was sent in, but unfortunately, Eduardo passed away while
Yeah.
doing that book. So Enrique Villagran, who I've mentioned before, I brought him like a year and a half later. You want to come in and do this? A few pages done, and he passed away. So that is.
You better stop fingering ours.
Yeah, that's in dark humor. A couple of people have said, "Well, it's 198 people to kill."
Yeah.
And I don't mean that as any disrespect to Ed or Enrique.
Yeah.
But so that is what you're talking about is the rights there. I wasn't going to wait for rights. I was going to do my own.
Sure. Right.
And that's still on hold just because I got to be honest with you. I'm not a superstitious guy.
Right.
I'm believer in God, and luck and superstitious stuff just doesn't cut it with me. But
right.
I'm maybe it's just a little bit of friendship trauma with that because both those guys were good friends of mine. That I'm going to hold off. At 67, I can't hold off too long. I tell everyone when I'm doing a new project, the clock's ticking on me. I'm not 30. Let's go. Yeah. But that I'm going to hold off. That and Eduardo and I had another Western called Cowboy Warrior King, basically about a cowboy that is in Africa and gets mixed up with some Zulu war stuff. And that's another one I've always wanted to do. And so I decided to do it as a comic book. But Eduardo was also the artist on that. So, holding off on that as well. And the bottom line is finding the right guy to draw this. Go ahead, Michael.
You recommended the book Splendid Savage.
Yes.
Which I found fascinating.
The guy was amazing, was he not?
Yeah. In fact, you've recommended a lot of books, which I found fascinating.
Well, thank you.
Beau is a source for the greatest adventure books. They're not fiction. They're mostly biographies of real people. I don't know where he finds them, but yeah.
Mike, the bookshelves behind me and those over there on that part of the library are filled with it. John D. Craig did a book called Danger is My Business. There's another one that you should. This guy's life was. Hold on one second, guys. Whoa. Sorry for being so cable access inappropriate there.
That's okay.
Let me see.
There.
This guy led a life like you would not believe. I'm not kidding you. You name it, he did it. He led a life of adventure. And then after he got a little bit older, he's the guy that filmed also all the stock footage you saw and everything from Tarzan, Zulu, any adventure movie.
Yeah.
And the best part about this book, when I bought it years ago, I picked it up for $5 and
wow,
it was signed by him inside. So the Holy Grail right there for Beau.
Yeah.
But you'd like that, Mike. It's I've got others that, they're just.
You've never steered me wrong.
Well, thank you. Well, that's because you didn't steer me wrong. So, although you did tell me that all those scripts of yours with thumbnails and stuff would be worth millions one day, and I'm still waiting for that part.
I wish I still had some.
Well, if I dig them out of the files, hey, it's been great to hold on to them these years, but I'll send them back.
Well, we could sell them and split the profits.
No, those are yours, buddy. But my correspondence, and that's the other thing, I've kept a lot of our correspondence from that time period. Oh, the humor that Mike had in these things was well, let's just put it this way: you should probably wear Depends. Because you're going to be soiling your pants. Mike is a very funny guy in not a slapstick, but just a good, dry, smart sense of humor. And the Badger, to me, always in that book, you always saw it all over the place.
Yeah. And
I'm almost going to say that Mike was an influence to me, but I'd hate to have to get him all mad at me. I'll tell you, Chuck Dixon was another. Chuck got into the business just basically maybe a year ahead of me when we were all trying to get in. And Chuck was great about giving me plots and scripts and, hey, I learned this and I saw this and did this. We, grew up together in that aspect. And not to sound corny, Walt Simonson was another who went out of his way. I was just a fan writing him at Upstart Studios. And the bad thing was, though, I got punished for it because he shared that office with Howard Chaykin. And when I would call, and if Howard would answer the phone, so what do you want him for? I said, well, I wanted to talk to him about plot. What, you're not going to be you're not going to be a writer. What makes you think you're going to be a writer? You're a fan. He would, browbeating since I knew he was kidding, this, that, and the other, but I enjoyed, getting beat up by Howard on the phone every once in a while. And then he'd put Walt on, and then you get the complete opposite of, of that. So I always thought to myself, how do those guys share a studio?
Yeah.
But really, Howard is so articulate and so smart.
We're going to have to line him up.
Huh?
We're going to have to line him up for the show.
Oh,
Yeah.
he's there's a guy you can sit and listen to and learn from 100%. Great, no matter what the topic, and not afraid to, not afraid to say anything. That's for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. I actually, and not to get into it a lot, but I was surprised that because in the one book that he had recently done, he was, yep.
There we go.
In the one book that he had recently done, he was complaining about how divided the right and the left are and stuff like that in the book. And then he ended up getting blasted so bad by people. And it's like, he's pointing out the way it is. And it was just like, but I mean, I was like, man, it's like, yeah, cause I talked with a few different creators and stuff, and they're like, man, but he went there where a lot of other people wouldn't go and address the different issues and how there isn't the respect and everything nowadays like like there once was. And that's been a big thing with me personally. And again, I'm just speaking of me, like anybody else, I've got my beliefs religiously, politically, this, that, there, on anything. But I worked so hard to get in this business, this particular business, to write, to tell stories, that and plus being on the business end, which I've been even longer than that, I personally, my opinion, never saw the sense in making my beliefs a part of my work, either in the stories as some secret agenda or the invention of social media, even doing that, because I would be cutting at least half of my livelihood one way or another. And why would I work to be in a business for so long and do something I need to do, I want to do? Maybe I've got a big enough ego to when I look in the mirror when I brush my teeth in the morning, go, you look good today, that I don't need to hear it from somebody else. I don't know. Or, you're a smart guy. I can tell myself that all day. But I don't see the purpose. And I got to be honest with you. I have met so many different people from different walks of life with me. I'm, from a small town in West Virginia. Back then you had to be in New York or Los Angeles to get into this business, this, that, and the other. And I've met so many people that are so different from me in all forms, but that common bond has always been comic books. It's real basic, but all of a sudden we get in a room and we're all 12 years old. And I don't mean acting silly or stupid, but that pure passion's there. I don't want everyone to lose that. At 67, I got just as much, if not more, passion for doing comics as I did then. And I see no sense in making enemies. I've met people that are so far different from me that bottom line is we should be in the street fighting right now. Right.
But, never, ever has that made a difference at all. And I'm talking about close friends. And I mean, I worked at Eclipse. I worked for Dean Mulaney and Cat Ironwood then. And they were as close to, back then, as socialist as you get. We were doing Brought to Light, but we were doing Airboy. Didn't matter. They wanted to do compelling comic books. That's what we did. Everything else, you saved for after the convention in the bar, and you're all sitting there having civil discussions on it. Right. But that's no part of anything that business-wise, I think it's just nutty. Yeah. That's not my persona. My persona is storytelling and comic books.
Yeah. Yeah, well, speaking of social media, are there places that you do encourage people to follow you, or
I'm on Facebook, and I try to keep it right under that 5,000
right?
thing, which it weighs just every once in a while I'll cut out from it. That's always a good place. I'm there all the time. Twitter there, I'm there, and Instagram I'm on. Instagram's just really, Instagram for me is just what Cobb and I are hikes in the morning, what pocket knife I'm carrying, what book I'm reading. It's that kind of thing.
Right.
And as far as following, I just follow things I'm interested in. It looks like a outdoors catalog most of the time. And I'm on those three all the time and use them for my stuff. So I'm not much of a tech wizard. So anything else, I don't do a lot of videos. And as you can tell from me being on your thing, after you lose 1 million people, they're going, Beau Smith, he's hideous. But,
Yeah. No, but I like that. And I encourage people, the other creators and stuff too. I'm like, don't just always be hawking your stuff. It's like, share stuff you like you're saying about, going out and doing the hikes with your dog and stuff.
Yeah.
And, I mean, it's like, you have to be yourself, and that's what they'll connect with. Not all, and especially as much as we get stuff sold to us and shoved on our face all day long, especially online. It's like, that's where we really don't want you to sit there and just ask us for money or pitch your thing to us all the time.
Yeah, I make people aware of something when it's coming out, but when I put up books or music or anything else, and Mike, again, Paul Black and the Flip Kings, one of the best albums I've ever owned, I still play it constantly, came from Michael. Mike sent it to me, came from there. The local band, Beau, you'll love it. He knows we share the love for the blues and stuff.
Right.
This stuff was incredible. That's the kind of stuff. I'm just doing what Mike, in this case, had set before me. Put up something I enjoy, maybe somebody else will.
Yeah.
And anytime I get somebody to go, hey, Beau, I bought that knife you put up the other day. I love that thing. That means the world to me. When
don't make me run and get my knives.
Mike, you were the first guy to ever show me how to use a butterfly. Is it butterfly knife?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was it. That was back in the day.
That's funny.
Yeah. Mike's an influence. He's taken that elder statesman status pretty good here in life.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, gentlemen.
Thanks. Thanks for being.
Yeah, Joe Piscopo is on TV right now talking about reverse mortgages. So I have to run.
I don't blame you, but thank you guys for having me on here. I hope I didn't ramble too much.
Yeah, no, it was great. We had a blast.
All right, boys, be good.